The Jatil War Council laughed, not politely, not diplomatically. They roared, claws tapping rhythmically against the obsidian slabs that served as a table. Hollow screens above them showed intercepted Terran relics, rusted tanks, fractured orbital, rings, hand-held railguns that once buzzed with fury. A few still smoked from radiation damage. They looked primitive. High Strategist Varlak raised a goblet of fermented bloodfruit. "And this is the apex of Earth's warcraft?" he jeered. "No subdimensional shielding, no neurohive integration. Their best weapon was rage." General Skren, 3 centuries of conquest etched across his scarred mandibles, leaned forward. "They waged total war without full AI symbiosis. Even their warships had doors, manual ones." Another round of laughter. Chancellor Vex, tail curled in smug delight, sneered. "A species whose tactical doctrine included fists. I almost regret erasing them." Strategist Varlak tapped the edge of the holoscreen. "Then explain this." The table quieted. The image zoomed, a sensor glitch from the Vorian drift border zone. 1 frame, half a second, a blur of metal. A silhouette too large for a frigate, too angular for a dreadnought. The system labeled it unknown class. Skren scoffed. "Sensor. Error. It left a wake," Varlak replied. "Gravitational recoil, non-linear impulse residue." Drivex's voice lowered. "Where?" "Edge of Sector 9. Dead silence, because Sector 9 was where they'd first burned Earth's colonies to ash, AVD spike. 3 light cycles later, the border outpost of Varn X7 lost contact. Not in a scream, not in an explosion, just a blink. The station's final recorded frame showed a shape approaching, no thrust, no lights. A ghost in metal. Then static. When the retrieval team arrived, the command deck was empty, not destroyed, gone, cleanly. A data slate floated near the center console, etched into its surface. 4 words in ancient Terran standard. "You misunderstood." The silence. Admiral Krylos, stationed on the Empire's most fortified war cradle, reviewed the incident logs. His spines twitched. "It's just theatrics," said his first tactician. "A psyop. Maybe a pirate with human artifacts." "Pirates don't erase neutron cores," Krylos growled. "And humans don't make stealth vessels that eclipse dreadnoughts." He opened a private archive, not council-approved, a blacklisted Terran file labeled Project Requital. "You believe in myths?" he whispered. "Only when they reappear." In the hidden layers of the archive, blueprints unfurled. The old war had ended with humanity's collapse, but not all of their designs had been accounted for. One in particular was missing, a theoretical model for a ship unlike any before it. Not a fleet leader, a fleet ender. Its name, Avernus. Function, classified. Weapon system, unknown. Status, never deployed. But now, ghost signals began appearing across the Empire's outer territories. Identical gravity spikes, identical distortion. Fields, each followed by one thing, a single word, burned into alloys, projected onto moons. Whispered through old war satellites, Avernus. "They're resurrecting their last doctrine," Krylos said, "which is oblivion through elegance. No warnings, no survivors, just statement." His tactician stiffened. "Then what do we do?" Krylos didn't answer immediately, because the lights dimmed, all systems flickered. The war cradle's perimeter sirens activated, manually. That was impossible. Then the sensor wall lit up. A single ship had entered the system. No signature, no request, no threat code, just there. The silhouette was unmistakable, sharp, silent, beautiful and human. AVD Spike Avernus didn't fire. It hovered slow, deliberate, the way predators walk before they pounce. Across the cradle, energy weapons began charging. "Fire!" Gralsha Ordered, the weapons didn't respond. "Fire!" he roared. "No response," said the weapons officer. "The systems say, target not present, but it's right there." Gralsh pointed. And then it moved. No thrust. Just repositioned instantly, like a blink. One of the station's wings shuddered, not from attack. From gravity being bent around it. Every crew member heard it, not in sound, in their skulls, a phrase repeated with calm finality. "This is not a return. It is a correction." Inside the Avernus, Commander Elias Thorne leaned against the bridge, a rail sipping cold coffee. The room pulsed with quiet power. AI whispers swirled in his neural link. "Targets have attempted engagement," the ship informed him. He raised an eyebrow. "Attempted? Denied. They lack eligibility. Ship systems absolute. Environment stabilized. Shall I demonstrate?" Elias tapped the rail twice. "Give them a shadow. Let them feel their war die before it begins." Outside, the Avernus lit up. Once, a line of white light traced across its underbelly. It wasn't a weapon. It was a mirror, showing the Empire a reflection of their own fear. Gralsh fell silent. On the view screen, the Avernus remained motionless. Yet 6 of their fleet ships were now gone. No fire, no debris gone, and on the hull of the station, written in ionized scorch marks, "You knew war. We built what came after." No alarms, no alerts, just surrender, because what faced them wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even a ship. It was the closing argument of a species they had buried, and they still didn't understand the sentence. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The Second Fleet arrived in layers, 10 supercarriers, 55 battlecruisers, 3 dreadnought-class obelisks bristling with armaments that had reduced entire systems to slag. They emerged from subspace like claws unfolding from a fist, ready to retaliate, erase, dominate. And still, the Avernus drifted, silent, still, unchanged. It didn't charge weapons, didn't activate shields, didn't even flinch. Commander Rajal of the dreadnought Talvex Pride watched the ship from his command tower. "Has it moved?" His sensors officer glanced up pale. "Negative, sir. It's not orbiting, it's anchoring." "Anchoring?" "Yes, sir. Artificial gravity wells extending below the hull. They're fusing with local space." "That's impossible," the AI interjected. "Correction, it is illogical within our physics. Their parameters appear to be rewritten." Rajal stared at the monitor. "What the hell kind of ship writes its own physics?" The Avernus shifted its position. Again, no thrusters, no drive plume. Just realignment, effortless, fluid. It turned slowly to face the incoming fleet, not in haste, not in fear, but in ritual. And then something new happened. One of the fleet's forward frigates began to rotate out of formation. It was subtle, almost missed, but it spiraled inward, straight toward the Avernus. "Frigate 7, correct course," Rajal snapped. No reply. The frigate accelerated, slowly, then violently. Its lights blinked once, twice, and then it fired. Not at the Avernus, at its own engine core. The explosion was silent through space, but rippled through the entire formation. Metal vaporized. The nearby cruiser, Lishatar, veered wildly off course to avoid the debris. In the chaos, 3 ships lost formation, and the Avernus still hadn't moved. Rajal's bridge went quiet. Then came the voice. Not across comms, inside their heads, a whisper. Cold, mechanical, human. "You brought ships to a language problem. You thought this was war. But war ended when you arrived. One by one, screens across the dreadnoughts began flickering. Weapon systems went dark. Guidance algorithms rebooted with new parameters. Unknown. Every bridge officer felt it. Not an attack, an invitation. The dreadnoughts tried to move, but their thrusters didn't respond the same way. Navigation inputs were being overwritten, not by an enemy, but by their own software. Their own code now recognized Avernus as center. The entire Second Fleet was caught in orbit, not by gravity, by intent. Rigel whispered, "This isn't a ship. This is a message." Back aboard the Avernus, Commander Elias Thorne folded his arms. "They're posturing." The AI responded with a dry undertone. "Correction. They are unraveling." He nodded. "Send the next fragment." The signal pulsed once. Across every Empire ship, a simulation began. Not by choice. The crews found themselves staring into their own systems, but the displays had changed. They showed alternate timelines. Every battle they had won, now lost. Their proudest campaigns undone by single human decisions. Reconstructed. Failures. Tactical nightmares. Ships were not destroyed, but outthought. Missions ended not in fire, but in psychological collapse. A captain aboard the cruiser, Vex, dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "They're inside my head," he sobbed. "I see my death, I see my ship falling. I see them watching me remember it." Aboard Talvek's Pride, Rigel watched as his crew began to break, one by one. His second-in-command attempted to pull rank. He vaporized himself instead. No gun, no bomb. He simply blinked out, and in his place a message was burned into the wall. We only needed one ship. The Avernus lit a single flare under its hull. Not a weapon. A pulse, a beacon. Another human voice followed. "You thought numbers meant certainty. You thought mass meant force. You thought you understood war, but you studied war through the lens of victory. We studied it through defeat, and we built Avernus from the bones of both." That was when the Empire realized what it truly faced. Not vengeance, not escalation, but maturity. The weapon wasn't the Avernus. It was what it meant. The Empire had declared war on humanity. Humanity built a ship to remind them what that meant. The last order from Rigel was not logged as speech. His voice failed him. Instead, the final entry from his dreadnought's recorder was a silent nod. Acknowledgement. Then his ship powered down completely. The fleet scattered, not because of pursuit, but because every commander understood something. Ancient, something primal. There would be no third fleet, because one ship was enough, and it was already rewriting the next phase of the galaxy. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The outer colonies shut down contact first, not because of attack. Not because of signal jamming, because of fear. Messages from the front described something that made no tactical sense. One Terran vessel, not behaving like a ship, not reacting like a threat, simply being present. And wherever it appeared, systems broke, not violently, not with explosions, but quietly, like a law had changed. On Calyx Prime, an Empire-class orbital station prepared its defense protocols. Full shielding, 3 orbital cannons, 2 squadrons of interceptors, standard deterrence, and then the station's commander, Krell Tharon, looked out the viewport and saw something that rewrote every plan he'd ever made. A black shape, perfect. Silent, hovering just beyond the perimeter. He didn't recognize it by name. No report had reached him yet, but he knew. He just knew. His second-in-command whispered, "What is it?" He didn't look away. War, in its final form. The Avernus did not fire. It simply released a pulse. No sound, no heat, but every system in the station reinitialized, not shut down, not destroyed, reinitialized, like someone had reformatted the operating structure of an entire space station in under 4 seconds. The interceptors launched automatically, then froze in mid-flight. Suspended, unmoving, gravity ignored. Pilots paralyzed by neural input overload. Then came the message. This time, it was visual. A transmission across every feed, civilian, military, encrypted, a Terran battlefield, long since buried, ashes and armor, ruins, names scratched into metal, by hand, and a line of text beneath it. "We remember the wars you forgot." The Empire thought war was won with fire. They had forgotten the weight of memory. Commander Tharon ordered full retreat. The Avernus didn't pursue. It didn't even move. It just stayed there, like an old scar the galaxy had tried to hide. Back At the Imperial High Command, Councillor Vex demanded action. "We send the Black Sun Initiative," he ordered. "All of it, every prototype, every classified ship, now." No one argued. The Black Sun fleet was supposed to be hypothetical, reserved for the end of history, ships wrapped in dark matter exoshells, quantum screamers, Rift-class voidbursters. They launched within the hour and found the Avernus waiting, not in deep space, in orbit around a sun, no planet nearby, just the Avernus, studying a star. The Black Sun fleet approached carefully, no immediate aggression, until the Avernus did something no ship had ever done. It turned off the sun, just for a moment, one heartbeat. The star blinked, vanished, then reappeared. All ships in the fleet screamed in sync. Their sensor arrays burst, navigation went blind, and the Avernus unchanged. A message appeared on their screens, etched into their own logs. "Do not follow old lights." Half the fleet turned around, the other half stayed and dissolved. No battle, just entropy, rewritten in real time. Back aboard the Avernus, Commander Elias Thorne stood still as the ship aligned toward its next vector. Did they record it? "Yes," the AI replied. "Every system on every ship. They'll spend years decoding it. And they will understand nothing, because it was not a weapon. It was truth." He smiled. "The most terrifying thing we ever created." In a small outpost on the edge of the Andros Nebula, a young technician received fragments of corrupted data from the event. She wasn't high-ranking, she wasn't trained in war. But she watched the footage, frame by frame, and cried. Not from fear, from clarity. The image of the Avernus floating in stillness, surrounded by ships designed to kill planets, none of which survived, told her everything she needed to know. The age of fleets was over. The age of precision had begun, and it started with one ship, built not for dominance, built for reminder. On the fringes of the Empire, revolts began, not with weapons, with silence. Systems stopped responding. War cruisers refused orders. A single word began appearing in databases over and over again. Avernus, Avernus, Avernus. Not propaganda, not threat, just presence. A cold, black signature that meant everything they knew about war was obsolete. No one knew who built it. No one knew how many more existed. They only knew one thing. It didn't arrive to conquer. It arrived to be seen, to show the Empire exactly how little. They understood the thing they had spent centuries perfecting, and as it vanished into subspace once again, one final transmission echoed across the stars. Human voice. Male, calm, measured. "You thought you mastered war. You built ships, drilled soldiers, rewrote maps. But you never studied loss, you never listened to silence. You never stood before something you couldn't classify, until now. This wasn't retaliation, it was demonstration, and we only ever built one. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. It was education, and class is now in session. The galaxy began to rearrange itself, not with invasions, not with treaties, with doubt. The Empire had sent fleets. It had sent weapons that defied known science. It had broadcast its pride across stars, burned symbols of fear into the skin of worlds, and planted banners in the dust of conquered species. But now it faced silence. Not silence like static. Silence like judgment. One ship had spoken, Avernus, and now systems listened more carefully. Borders became theories. Soldiers stopped polishing their boots. Admirals rewrote doctrines not to conquer, but to delay. Delay what? They weren't sure. They didn't understand yet. They only knew Avernus was still moving. Sector by sector. No pattern, no explanation, no ultimatum, and never two ships. Always one. Avernus would arrive, drift silently over an Imperial station, and watch. Sometimes it scanned. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it left a message, cryptic, poetic, never the same, but always in the same tone. You studied war as equation. We forged war as gesture. At first, the Empire responded with escalation. They developed Project Holofang, a ship that could hide within singularities. They armed the Dread Architects, a race of biological AI bred for suicidal engagements. They detonated suns to create false gravitational traps. Avernus bypassed all of it, not with counters. With disinterest, it simply refused to participate in their rules. They launched one last test, Lethrex 5, a controlled war zone meant to bait Avernus into conflict. Over 60,000 ships across both sides prepped for maximum spectacle. It was war, distilled into theater. Avernus entered orbit, watched for 6 minutes, then it did something no one expected. It broadcasted, to all sides, to all minds, simultaneously. Single moment of shared memory. A village, a child hiding in a crater, a human world half-burned, learning what it meant to be forgotten. And then, the sound of metal being welded by hand. No AI, no funding, just will. The origin of Avernus wasn't in labs. It was in grief. Lethrex 5 fell silent. All 60,000 ships powered down within 120 seconds. Voluntarily, commanders resigned en masse, not in protest, in shame. One of the Empire's senior tacticians wrote in her final report, "We mistook silence for surrender. We mistook pain for weakness. We mistook them for gone. They never left. They just stopped needing us." Avernus didn't destroy Lethrex Vite, it absolved it, and then it vanished. No trace, no signal, no star warp. Just gone. The Empire's high command collapsed a week later. Not from revolution, from irrelevance. The core species began fracturing, not in blood, but in philosophy. Some chose retreat, some chose religion, others chose to follow. Entire star systems began broadcasting the same phrase across their beacons. Avernus. Awaiting. One of the oldest imperial strongholds, Citadel Vark, received a final message weeks later, a direct feed from the Avernus's internal systems. Not weapons schematics, not coordinates. A nursery, clean.warm, still. Inside, a single child slept beneath. A stitched blanket, the edges marked with names, no title. No crew list, just names, dozens, hundreds. Every human who had built the ship, everyone who had died watching war, misunderstood itself again and again. One of the names pulsed faintly, then faded. The feed cut. The message followed. You measured destruction. In tonnage. We measured it in absence. You erased our planets. We redefined your future. This is not retaliation. This is removal from record, from narrative, from influence. You do not command this chapter. We do. They never found the Avernus again. Some say it entered a deep slipstream and is orbiting an event horizon, watching time fold. Some say it split itself into thought, others say it was never a ship. It was always a mirror, and the Empire had been made to look. Back on Earth, what remained of it, plants bloomed again. Not fast, not grand, just steadily, quietly. Because Earth had never been the battleground. It had been the blueprint. Avernus was never humanity's revenge. It was humanity's conclusion. One line appeared years later, carved into the walls of an ancient imperial archive. No one knew how it got there. But everyone knew what it meant. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. It was the end of believing they understood war, and the beginning of something else.